Imagine being so rich you can buy the world, but so empty inside that even your shadow avoids you. You are so fat. No one wants you. We all want your fat check. Look at him. He thinks a fat wallet makes up for a fat ego. They all laughed. His life is proof that money can build skyscrapers, but not self-respect. Wait, he is coming, just pretend. They all laughed and kept a straight face. They called him names behind his back. They laughed at his size when they thought he couldn't hear. He hears all, but too ashamed to speak up. A billionaire? Yes, but one the world treated like a punchline. A monster. A man to be pitied or avoided. Everywhere he went, eyes rolled. Whispers followed. They didn't care about his generosity, his brilliance, or his heart. They only saw his body. And so, for years, he lived in silence, rich enough to buy the world, but too broken to believe he belonged in it. Until one night, everything changed. Because while the world mocked him, one woman, an elegant, fearless black woman, saw what no one else dared to. She saw his heart. She saw his pain. She saw the man. And from that moment, his life, his love, and everything he thought he knew about himself would never be the same. Welcome back, my beautiful family and friends. I have longed to share this story with you all. Missed the last experiences we've had together. It's been a rough ride here, but trust me, getting everything in place because of the joy we share together. So stick around. I need your support on YouTube now more than ever. Thank you especially for sticking around always. If you're hooked in and you're ready to enjoy the story, click subscribe and let me know in the comments where you're watching from. Because tomorrow, I will be giving you another story just as interesting as this one. And you don't want to miss it. Now back to the story. In a room filled with diamonds, laughter, and whispered cruelty, he stood alone until her eyes found his. And in that moment, the billionaire the world avoided finally felt seen. The Harrington Tower stood like a fortress above Midtown Manhattan, its glass facade catching the fading orange glow of sunset. Inside its highest penthouse, silence pressed against the walls like an unwelcome guest. Daniel Harrington sat alone at his dinner table, which stretched longer than the living rooms of most New Yorkers. Crystal glasses gleamed under chandelier light, a polished silver fork lay in his hand, and a three-course meal sat steaming before him. Rack of lamb, roasted asparagus, truffle, mashed potatoes. A personal chef had prepared it, plated it with precision, and retreated quietly. Daniel's fork dragged across the plate with a slow, hollow scrape. He wasn't hungry. He rarely was. Food had stopped being joy a long time ago. It was comfort, a quiet companion when no one else stayed. The leather of his chair groaned as he leaned back, staring at the feast he didn't want. His broad frame filled the chair, his tuxedo shirt already looser than the custom suit he'd wear tomorrow. His reflection in the glass wall stared back at him, doubled by the glittering skyline behind. A man with power beyond measure. A man alone. He lifted his wine glass, swirling deep red liquid. The motion caught the faint tremble of his hand. His voice was dry when he muttered, "Happy birthday, Daniel." No one answered. No one ever did. The intercom crackled. A calm, rehearsed voice filled the silence. "Sir, Mr. Roberts confirmed your attendance at tomorrow's gala. The foundation requests you arrive promptly at 8. Shall I arrange the car?" Daniel sighed. He had attended hundreds of such events, lavish gatherings where people smiled at his money but sneered at his body. He loathed them, but he knew what they meant for business, for optics. "Fine," he said, his voice flat, almost robotic. "Schedule it." When the line went dead, he set his glass down with a dull thud and rubbed his temples. Another night of whispered ridicule and hollow laughter awaited. Another night of being the fat billionaire everyone avoided. Across the city, in Harlem, warm lamplight spilled across Jasmine Collins' apartment. Unlike Daniel's sterile palace, her space was alive. Walls lined with books, framed art from emerging black artists, a vase of fresh lilies scenting the air. The faint hum of jazz from a vintage record player filled the room with soul. Jasmine sat at her desk, glasses perched on her nose, flipping through her planner. Her handwriting was precise, her notes color-coded. The Harrington Foundation Gala was tomorrow, and she was responsible for orchestrating every detail. Her phone buzzed with committee messages. Can we swap the seating arrangement for table 3? Don't forget, the mayor wants to be near the Harringtons. The stage lighting must flatter the performers. Jasmine handled them all with steady efficiency, her fingers dancing over her keyboard. She was used to balancing the egos of New York's elite while trying to give space for underrepresented voices in the city's art scene. Still, she paused, leaning back in her chair, the weight of it all pressed against her shoulders. In these rooms, appearances always came first. She'd seen it too many times. People dismissed for their skin, their body, their background. She knew it well herself. Despite her reputation for elegance and her unshakable poise, Jasmine had been underestimated countless times. Some saw her as the beautiful black woman who makes things look nice. Few recognized her intellect, her vision, or the resilience it took to navigate rooms where whispers lingered behind every smile. Jasmine closed her planner and stood, stretching her long frame. She walked to the window, looking out at the city lights glittering like stars. Tomorrow would be another night of masks. Another night where she'd glide across a ballroom with polished grace. She didn't yet know that tomorrow, she'd meet someone who carried wounds like hers, only heavier. The grand ballroom at the plaza gleamed like something out of a dream. Crystal chandeliers sparkled, polished marble reflected gowns and tuxedos, and champagne flowed like rivers of gold. A string quartet played softly as waiters wove between clusters of Manhattan's elite, balancing silver trays laden with hors d'oeuvres. Daniel arrived late, as he always did. His chauffeur opened the car door, and flashbulbs immediately popped outside the hotel. Paparazzi shouted his name. "Mr. Harrington, look here. Smile." He didn't smile. He never did. His tuxedo jacket strained slightly across his chest, his bow tie perfectly knotted, his hair slicked back with precision. He looked powerful, commanding. And yet, the whispers began before he even reached the ballroom doors. There he is. Daniel Harrington. My God, he's bigger than ever. With all that money, you'd think he'd hire a better trainer. I heard he hasn't had a date in years. Poor man. Daniel kept his gaze forward, jaw clenched, each whisper cut like glass. He moved through the crowd with the presence of a man who owned half the room, but inside, he felt like a boy still hiding from mockery. He found his usual place, a quiet corner near the bar, half shielded by a floral arrangement. He ordered a scotch and kept his eyes down, letting the laughter and sparkle of the night wash past him. Across the room, Jasmine arrived. Heads turned when she entered, not because of scandal, but because of her quiet command. She wore a floor-length emerald gown that shimmered against her brown skin. Her hair swept elegantly into a bun, her movements effortless. Unlike others, she wasn't here to impress. She was here to work, to make sure the event ran flawlessly. But her presence alone made people watch. She moved through the room gracefully, greeting donors, adjusting details, checking on performers. Yet when her eyes landed on Daniel Harrington, her steps slowed. He stood alone, shoulders hunched slightly, a giant of a man in a room that refused to welcome him. The contrast was striking. In a sea of laughter, he was an island of silence. Their eyes met. His gaze flicked away quickly, as if bracing for mockery. But Jasmine didn't look away. Instead, she let her gaze soften, offering something few had ever given him: recognition. Not of his wealth, not of his size, but of his humanity. Moments later, their paths crossed near an art installation she had curated, photographs of children whose education the foundation supported. Jasmine stepped toward him, her voice calm, warm, steady. "Mr. Harrington," she said, her lips curving into a real smile, not the polite one she gave donors. "Thank you for being here tonight. The foundation's work means so much to people." Daniel blinked, caught off guard. "Most people just thank my checkbook." Her eyes didn't waver. "Then they're not looking closely enough." Silence stretched between them for a moment, but it wasn't uncomfortable. Daniel felt his chest tighten. Not with shame, but with something he hadn't felt in years. Hope. And for Jasmine, something stirred too. She saw a man who had been judged, ridiculed, pushed aside. And for reasons she couldn't explain, she wanted to know him. As the string quartet shifted into a softer melody, the crowd carried on with its glittering performance. But in one corner of the ballroom, something real had sparked. A billionaire, avoided by all, had been seen for the first time. An elegant woman, underestimated by many, had seen his heart. And neither of their lives would ever be the same. Have you ever judged someone too quickly, only to discover later there was so much more to their story? What did it teach you? Share your thoughts in the comments. I'd love to hear your perspective. The night wore on at the Plaza Hotel, chandeliers shimmering above the crowd like suspended stars. Waiters glided between conversations, offering trays of champagne flutes and hors d'oeuvres. The laughter of New York's elite rang out, polished and sharp, echoing against the marble walls. But at the edge of it all, Daniel Harrington stood rooted in silence. He had spent years perfecting the art of invisibility, even as the most visible man in the room. People noticed him, of course. They always noticed, but rarely did anyone approach. They whispered, they judged, they avoided. And then Jasmine Collins stepped into his orbit. Daniel stared at the photographs lining the wall, black and white images of children in schools funded by the Harrington Foundation. Their smiles were wide, their joy captured in candid moments of play and learning. For a brief second, Daniel felt something like pride, muted, fragile, but then his defenses kicked in. "These are beautiful," a soft voice said beside him. Daniel turned, startled, and found Jasmine at his side. Up close, her presence was even more striking than across the room. She radiated calm confidence, her emerald gown catching the light with each subtle movement. "They are," he replied stiffly, his voice deep, gravelly. "Did you know," Jasmine continued, "that one of the students in these photographs just received a full scholarship to Columbia? She said she wanted to study engineering because of the computer labs your foundation built." Daniel blinked, shifting uncomfortably. "I didn't know that." Most people only told him numbers, donation amounts, projected returns, tax write-offs. No one ever told him stories. No one told him that his money had touched real lives. "You've made a bigger difference than you realize," Jasmine said, her eyes searching his. Daniel chuckled, but it was brittle. "Most people just see me as a walking wallet." Her expression softened, but she didn't pity him. Instead, she tilted her head slightly. "Is that how you see yourself?" The question disarmed him. He wasn't used to being challenged, at least not in a way that felt caring. "I see myself as a man who's very good at making money," he muttered, "and very bad at everything else." Jasmine's lips curved into a faint smile. "Maybe you just haven't given yourself a chance to be seen beyond that." Their conversation was interrupted by a burst of laughter nearby. Two women in sequined gowns stood within earshot, their voices sharp, cutting. "Look at him," one whispered loudly enough to be heard. "I swear, with that kind of money you'd think he'd hire a surgeon at least." The other finished, snickering. Daniel froze, his jaw clenched, eyes fixed on the floor. The words weren't new. He'd heard them all before, in boardrooms, tabloids, even whispered by supposed friends. But the sting never dulled. Jasmine's gaze flicked to the women, her expression hardening. She turned back to Daniel, speaking with quiet force. "Don't you dare let them define you," she said. Daniel looked up, startled by her intensity. "You're here," she continued. "You're supporting children, communities, futures, and all they can see is the surface? That says more about them than it does about you." Her voice carried no pity, no condescension, only truth. For the first time in years, Daniel felt something inside him loosen, like a knot untangling. Later in the evening, Jasmine slipped outside onto the balcony for air. The city stretched beneath her, glittering and alive. She leaned against the railing, inhaling the cool night breeze. Behind her, heavy footsteps approached. Daniel stepped out, his broad figure silhouetted against the city lights. For a moment, he hesitated, as if unsure whether he was welcome. Jasmine turned and smiled softly. "Needed a break?" she asked. He nodded. "Crowds aren't my favorite thing. They can be exhausting," she agreed. "So many people talking, but so little being said." That drew a small, genuine chuckle from him. "Exactly." They stood side by side in silence for a while, the hum of the city below filling the quiet. Daniel's shoulders gradually relaxed, the weight of the room behind them lifting. "You know," Jasmine said, breaking the silence, "I think loneliness is louder in a crowded room than in an empty one." Daniel's breath caught. He turned his head slowly to look at her. "That's exactly how it feels." Their eyes held, the city lights reflecting in them both. Something passed between them, unspoken, fragile, but undeniable. As the gala wound down, Daniel found himself walking Jasmine to her car. Surprised him, this impulse. He rarely lingered, never engaged. Yet here he was, his heart pounding like he was 20 years younger. "Thank you," he said awkwardly. "For what?" Jasmine asked, turning to face him. "For treating me like a man, not a spectacle." His voice cracked slightly, betraying vulnerability he usually kept locked away. Jasmine studied him for a moment, her gaze unwavering. Then she said softly, "Daniel, you are a man. A complicated, imperfect, very human man. And that's worth more than any fortune." For a long moment he couldn't speak. Her words pierced through years of ridicule, shame, and self-protection. "Good night, Mr. Harrington," Jasmine said, her smile lingering. She slid into her car, leaving Daniel standing on the sidewalk, watching the taillights disappear into the night. He stayed there long after the car was gone, his heart beating with something he hadn't felt in years. Hope. Inside the vast emptiness of his penthouse later that night, Daniel replayed her words over and over. "You are a man, and that's worth more than any fortune." For the first time in years, Daniel Harrington didn't feel invisible. And for Jasmine Collins, as her car wove through Harlem streets, she couldn't shake the image of his eyes. Eyes that carried pain, but also the glimmer of something rare, something she wanted to understand. Do you think one kind word can truly change the course of someone's life? Or does change only come from within? Share your thoughts below. I want to know what you believe. The days following the gala were strangely unsettled for Daniel Harrington. He had spent years moving through events like a ghost in a tailored suit, seen, but not truly seen. The night had been no different, except for her, Jasmine Collins, the elegant woman in emerald, whose voice still echoed in his thoughts. "You are a man, a complicated, imperfect, very human man." The words had lodged deep in him, refusing to leave, and that scared him. Daniel sat in his office high above Midtown Manhattan, a fortress of steel and glass. The morning sun bounced off skyscrapers, spilling golden light into his corner office. His assistant, Mark, rattled off updates, stock performance, a merger proposal, the latest real estate acquisition. Daniel nodded absently, not really listening. His mind wasn't on numbers for once. "Sir?" Mark asked, frowning. "Should I repeat the projections?" Daniel blinked, realizing he'd been staring at the skyline for minutes. "No, I heard you. That'll be all." When the door closed, Daniel leaned back in his chair, pressing his fingers against his temple. He hated this. He hated feeling distracted, vulnerable. One night, one woman, and suddenly his careful isolation felt cracked open. He told himself it had been nothing more than courtesy. She was polite, professional, paid to charm donors. That was all. Still, he remembered the way she had defended him against whispers, the fire in her eyes when she told him not to let them define him. That hadn't felt like performance. That had felt personal. And that was dangerous. Meanwhile, across Harlem, Jasmine was equally restless. She sat at a cafe with her friend and colleague, Tasha, sipping a cappuccino. "You've been quiet," Tasha observed, raising an eyebrow. "What's on your mind?" Jasmine stirred her cup, debating. Finally, she said, "Do you know Daniel Harrington?" Tasha let out a low whistle. The billionaire recluse? The one everyone whispers about? What about him? I met him at the gala. He's different from what people say. Tasha smirked. Different how? Still rich, still big, still the city's favorite tabloid target. Jasmine frowned. That's the thing. Everyone sees the surface. But when I talked to him, I saw something else. Someone else. He's... She hesitated, searching for the word. Lonely, and kind, and more human than people give him credit for. Tasha leaned back. Jazz, I know you. You've got a big heart. But be careful. Men like him come with baggage. And the media will eat you alive if they even think you're close. Jasmine sighed, knowing her friend was right. She wasn't naive. She'd worked too hard to build her career, her reputation. Associating with Daniel could undo everything. And yet, his eyes haunted her. The way he had looked at her, like she'd been the first person in years to see past his walls. Over the next week, Daniel buried himself in work. He attended meetings, signed contracts, reviewed proposals. But every time he tried to focus, her voice intruded. He considered calling her. His assistant had her contact information from the gala committee. One call and she'd answer. But then fear took over. What would he even say? Hi. Thank you for not mocking me like everyone else? Pathetic. So he didn't call. He avoided. Jasmine, too, threw herself into her projects, organizing a gallery opening, mentoring a group of young artists. Yet when her phone buzzed, some part of her always hoped it would be him. It never was. They orbited each other in silence, both pulled by gravity, both resisting. One evening, Daniel attended another function, an investment dinner at a Manhattan hotel. He was halfway through the meal when the whispers started again. Did you see him at the gala? Someone said at a nearby table. Yes, with that Collins woman, the curator. She was actually talking to him, probably trying to secure more funding. Smart move, I suppose. Flatter the lonely giant. Get what you need. Daniel's stomach twisted. He shoved his fork down and stood abruptly, leaving the table. He stormed into the restroom, gripping the sink, staring at his reflection in the mirror. She doesn't care. She couldn't possibly care. It was politeness, the strategy, nothing more. He told himself this over and over like a shield, yet the echo of her words from the balcony clashed against it. That says more about them than it does about you. For every cruel whisper, her voice rose louder in his mind. Fate, however, had other plans. 2 weeks later, Jasmine was at the Metropolitan Museum of Art for a private preview of an African art exhibition she had helped curate. She walked the halls with quiet pride, discussing pieces with colleagues and patrons. Turning a corner, she froze. Daniel Harrington stood there, alone as always. He wore a dark suit, his shoulders hunched slightly, eyes scanning the sculptures with detached interest. Her heart skipped. He looked up at that exact moment and their eyes met. For a second, neither moved. Then Daniel gave a stiff nod, almost formal. Ms. Collins. Mr. Harrington, Jasmine replied, her voice calm though her pulse raced. They stood in silence, the weight of unspoken thoughts pressing between them. Finally, Daniel cleared his throat. You did a remarkable job with this exhibit. Thank you, she said softly. It means a lot, coming from you. Another pause. He shifted, clearly fighting with himself. Finally, he muttered, I should go, before she could respond. He turned and walked away, leaving Jasmine standing among priceless art, her chest tight with frustration and something that felt suspiciously like hurt. That night, Daniel sat in his penthouse, staring at his untouched dinner once again. Jasmine lay awake in her Harlem apartment, staring at the ceiling. Both of them felt the pull. Both of them resisted. For Daniel, it was fear of being a fool, of being hurt again. For Jasmine, it was fear of risking her career, her peace, her heart. And so, though fate had nudged them closer, they pulled away. But fate wasn't finished with them yet. Do you think fear of rejection keeps people from experiencing real love? Or is fear a necessary wall until trust is earned? I'd love to hear your perspective. drop a comment below. It was a gray Tuesday morning in New York when Daniel's assistant stepped into his office with a folder. "Sir," Mark said carefully, "the Harrington Foundation's board has approved the funding for the city's new cultural initiative. They've recommended Ms. Jasmine Collins as the lead curator for the project." Daniel froze. "Collins?" "Yes, sir. She'll be working closely with the foundation over the next 6 months. Contracts have been signed." Daniel's heart kicked hard against his chest. 6 months. Proximity. He could already feel the quiet ache of wanting. An ache he had been working so hard to deny. "Arrange a meeting," Daniel said finally, his tone clipped. Mark nodded, retreating. Daniel leaned back in his chair, rubbing his jaw. Of all the curators in New York, of all the people the board could have chosen, fate had chosen her. The Harrington Foundation boardroom gleamed with polished wood, panoramic city views stretching beyond the windows. Daniel stood at the head of the long table, his presence filling the room even as he wished he could vanish. The door opened, and Jasmine walked in. She wore a tailored navy suit, her natural hair styled in soft curls, her stride calm and assured. She paused when her eyes landed on him, but only for a second. "Mr. Harrington," she said politely. "Ms. Collins," Daniel replied, his voice even, betraying nothing of the storm inside him. They sat across from each other, board members chattering around them about budgets and timelines. But to Daniel, the room blurred. He could feel her presence, steady, unflinching. At one point, as she presented her vision for the project, her eyes met his across the table. For a heartbeat, the professional mask slipped, and something softer flickered there. He looked away first. Weeks passed. Meetings turned into planning sessions. Planning sessions turned into late nights poring over designs, debating choices, reviewing proposals. One evening, they worked alone in the boardroom, papers spread across the table, the city lights glowing through the windows. "You're stubborn," Jasmine said, shaking her head after one heated discussion about an exhibit layout. Daniel raised a brow. "I prefer the word decisive." She laughed, a warm, rich sound that startled him. "Decisive? You argued for 15 minutes about the placement of a single painting." He fought a smile but lost. "Fine, stubborn. But I know what I like. And I know what will actually work," she shot back, her eyes gleaming with playful challenge. For the first time in years, Daniel found himself enjoying the sparring. Her presence didn't feel like judgment, felt like air. As the clock ticked past midnight, Jasmine stretched, rubbing the back of her neck. Daniel noticed the weariness in her eyes, the way her shoulders slumped when she thought no one was looking. "You work too hard," he said quietly. She glanced at him. "Takes one to know one." Something unspoken lingered in the air between them. Another night, rain pounded against the city as they worked in his office. The storm blurred the skyline, thunder rolling in the distance. The power flickered once, plunging the room into semi-darkness before emergency lights hummed on. Jasmine gave a small laugh. "So much for the invincibility of Manhattan skyscrapers." Daniel's chest tightened at the sound. He turned, watching her in the dim light. Without the harsh glare of office lamps, she looked softer, almost ethereal. "Why do you do it?" he asked suddenly. "Do what?" "Put yourself in these rooms. With people who," he hesitated, "people who don't always respect you." Jasmine's expression grew thoughtful. "Because someone has to. Because I believe culture belongs to everyone, not just the privileged. And because I won't let other people's smallness decide my worth." Her words hit him like a mirror. His throat tightened. "I wish I had your courage." "You do," she said gently. "You just don't trust it yet." Silence stretched, heavy with something neither dared name. One weekend, the foundation organized a retreat upstate to finalize plans. A storm grounded flights, and the team was stranded overnight at a country estate. Most of the board found rooms in nearby inns, but Daniel and Jasmine ended up being the last two left when accommodations ran out. The staff offered them adjacent rooms in the estate's guest wing. As they walked down the long hallway, suitcases in hand, Jasmine glanced at him with a wry smile. Well, looks like we're neighbors tonight. Daniel's ears burned. Just my luck, he muttered. But there was no edge in his voice. Later, when the power flickered again and the halls fell dark, Jasmine knocked on his door. Do you have a flashlight? She asked, her voice calm but tinged with amusement. He opened the door, holding up his phone's light. High-tech Billionaire survival kit. She laughed softly, stepping inside to escape the shadows of the hallway. They sat together in the glow of a single lamp that finally hummed to life, the storm howling outside. And for the first time, neither tried to run. That night, as the storm raged outside the estate, Daniel and Jasmine talked. Not about budgets or art, but about music, childhood memories, the little things they missed about simpler days. By the time silence settled, Daniel realized he hadn't felt this close to anyone in decades. And Jasmine realized she no longer wanted to resist the pull she felt toward him. Forced together by circumstance, they had stopped pretending to be strangers. And in that closeness, something fragile and undeniable had begun to grow. The storm passed overnight, leaving the upstate estate wrapped in silence. Morning sunlight streamed through tall windows, glinting off dew-soaked lawns. Daniel sat at the breakfast table, sipping coffee, when Jasmine entered. She wore a simple cream blouse, her hair tied back, her face calm but touched by weariness. Sleep well? Daniel asked, his voice low. As well as one can with thunder rattling the walls, Jasmine said with a small smile. They ate quietly, but beneath the silence, something hung heavy, the residue of last night's closeness. For the first time, Daniel felt the fragile ache of wanting to know her. Not the professional curator, not the woman who had defended him once, but her. Later, as they walked the estate's grounds waiting for transport back to the city, Jasmine glanced at him. You grew up around here, didn't you? Daniel stiffened. Yes, not far. But I don't go back. Why not? His throat tightened. Few people asked him that. Fewer still cared to know the answer. But her voice carried no judgment, only curiosity. Because it wasn't home, he said finally. My father was a hard man. Nothing I did was ever enough. I wasn't strong enough, thin enough, smart enough. He made sure I knew it every single day. Jasmine's chest ached. And your mother? She left when I was 13. Said she couldn't take his cruelty anymore. I haven't seen her since. The confession hung between them, raw and unpolished. Daniel rarely shared his past, and saying it aloud made him feel exposed. But Jasmine didn't recoil. She reached out, brushing her fingers lightly against his arm. That must have been unbearably lonely. Daniel swallowed hard. Her touch seared into him, tender and dangerous. That evening, back in Manhattan, Jasmine sat in Daniel's office as they reviewed plans. Papers scattered across the desk, but she wasn't focused. His story had unsettled something in her. Daniel, she said softly, may I tell you something? He looked up, surprised. Of course. She drew a breath. I lost someone once. Someone I thought I'd build my life with. He said he loved me. But when I started dreaming bigger than he could handle, when I began carving out a space in the art world, he said I was too much. Too ambitious. Too intimidating. And he left. Her voice cracked, though her chin lifted with quiet defiance. Daniel's chest tightened. He was a fool. She gave a broken laugh. At the time, I thought it meant I wasn't enough. Not beautiful enough, not lovable enough. Took years to realize it wasn't me. It was him. But the scar is still there. For a long moment, Daniel just looked at her. His heart heavy with something unfamiliar yet piercing. Empathy. You're more than enough, he said quietly. Their eyes met, and in that silence, something shifted. A few days later, Jasmine stopped by Daniel's office to drop off some sketches. While waiting for him, she wandered near the bookshelves, and her eyes caught a framed photograph half hidden behind files. It was of a young boy, round-faced, with solemn eyes and a bruise darkening one cheek. The boy was unmistakably Daniel. She froze, her chest tightening. When Daniel returned, he saw her looking. His expression hardened instantly. You weren't meant to see that. I'm sorry, Jasmine said quickly. I didn't mean to pry. Daniel, that was you, wasn't it? He turned away, jaw clenched. It doesn't matter. That boy is gone. No, Jasmine said gently, stepping closer. He's not gone. He's still inside you, carrying pain he never deserved. And you've been protecting him all these years. His throat worked, but he couldn't speak. No one had ever spoken of that boy with compassion before. Only scorn, ridicule, or dismissal. Her words cracked something inside him, and for once, he didn't resist. The next week, paparazzi caught Daniel and Jasmine leaving a meeting together. The tabloids swarmed. Mystery woman seen with billionaire recluse. Jasmine's phone buzzed with calls, emails, even veiled warnings from colleagues. She stormed into Daniel's office. Do you realize what this could do to my career? People already think I only get opportunities because I charm donors. This will confirm every stereotype. Daniel's face fell. I didn't mean for this to happen. I know you didn't, she said, softer now. But this is what I was afraid of. Being seen with you. It changes things for me. Her words, though honest, pierced him. For a moment, Daniel felt himself shrinking back into that boy in the photograph. The one nobody wanted to stand beside. But Jasmine caught the look in his eyes and sighed, her anger melting. I didn't mean it that way. I can't let people's cruelty undo everything I've worked for. Daniel nodded slowly, understanding. Still, the sting remained. That night, they sat in the dim light of his office, both raw from their confessions and the chaos of the tabloids. I don't want to hurt you, Jasmine whispered. And I don't want to ruin you, Daniel replied. Their honesty bound them even closer, even as it revealed the fragile fault lines beneath their connection. In unveiling their pasts, they had found both empathy and risk. And though their bond deepened, shadows still lingered, whispers of doubt, fear, and the threat of a world that would never stop watching. The tabloids had grown relentless. Flashbulbs exploded outside Daniel's penthouse, and whispers about the billionaire and the curator made headlines on morning shows. Daniel hated it. Not for himself, he was used to it, but for Jasmine. One evening, he called her. His voice was unusually hesitant. Would you get away with me for the weekend? Just somewhere quiet. No photographers. No noise. There was a pause, then Jasmine's warm laugh. Daniel, are you inviting me to run away? Maybe just walk away. For a little while. After a moment, she said softly, yes. They drove north, away from Manhattan's chaos, into the calm of the Catskill Mountains. Daniel's driver left them at a secluded cabin on Harrington-owned land. The cabin was simple but elegant. Stone fireplace, shelves lined with books, wide windows overlooking a lake. As Jasmine stepped inside, she exhaled deeply. This feels like breathing again. Daniel watched her, something easing in his chest. That's why I come here when I can. Out here, no one cares who I am. No cameras, she teased gently. No boardrooms. And no whispers, he added quietly. For the first time in weeks, Daniel felt peace. That evening, instead of summoning staff or catering, Jasmine insisted they cook. You own the cabin, but I own the kitchen tonight, she declared, rolling up her sleeves. Daniel raised a brow. You're going to cook for me? No, she said with a grin. We're going to cook together. The sight of the billionaire chopping vegetables awkwardly, while Jasmine teased him, became a memory Daniel knew he'd never forget. You're holding the knife like it's a hostile takeover, she laughed. And you're bossy, he countered, though a rare smile lit his face. As the stew simmered and bread warmed in the oven, the cabin filled with laughter and warmth, things long absent from Daniel's life. After dinner, Jasmine found an old record player in the cabin. She brushed dust from the cover and set a vinyl spinning. The sound of Motown classics filled the room. She swayed lightly to the rhythm, eyes closed. This is what home feels like. Daniel watched her, mesmerized. Tentatively, he asked, Dance with me? Her brows lifted. You? Dance? Don't look so surprised, he muttered, but his ears burned. She laughed softly and took his hand. His steps were clumsy, but she guided him gently. Soon, they moved together in the small space, his large hand at her waist, her head tilted slightly toward his chest. For Daniel, the moment felt impossible, like something he had once believed he was undeserving of. And for Jasmine, it felt like a risk worth taking. Later, they sat by the crackling fire. Jasmine curled up in an armchair, sipping tea. Daniel sat across from her, the glow casting his face in warm light. You know what I realized tonight? Jasmine said softly. What? That you're funny. In your own stubborn, dry way. He chuckled, surprised. No one's ever accused me of that before. They don't see you, she said, her tone tender. He held her gaze. But you do. The words slipped out before he could stop them. Heat rose in his chest, but Jasmine didn't look away. Instead, she whispered, Yes, I do. Silence stretched, not heavy but full, like a secret shared. Before turning in for the night, Daniel hesitated outside her room. He wanted to say something, but the words tangled. Jasmine opened her door, tilting her head. Daniel, why are you here? He blurted. With me? You could be with anyone. Someone easier. Someone who doesn't drag you into headlines or make you fight against the world. Her expression softened. Because I don't want easy. I want real. And with you I feel real. His throat tightened. He whispered almost to himself. No one's ever said that to me. Jasmine reached for his hand, squeezing gently. Then I'll be the first. That night, Daniel lay awake in his room, staring at the ceiling. Jasmine's words echoed in his mind. I don't want easy. I want real. And for the first time in decades, Daniel didn't feel like a man to be hidden or mocked. He felt like a man worth choosing. Meanwhile, Jasmine drifted to sleep with the sound of rain on the cabin roof, her heart both comforted and frightened, because what she felt for him wasn't just connection. It was the beginning of love. And love, she knew, could heal or shatter. When Daniel and Jasmine returned from the cabin, reality slammed back into place. The tabloids hadn't cooled, they had intensified. Headlines screamed, Curator captures the billionaire's heart? Mystery woman moves in on Harrington fortune. Photographs of them leaving the cabin property together were splashed across gossip sites. Daniel's phone buzzed with calls from investors, board members, and even distant family. The tone was the same, thinly veiled concern. This could damage your reputation. She looks opportunistic. Protect yourself. Daniel seethed. He knew Jasmine wasn't using him. And yet, the constant whispers scratched at old scars. Meanwhile, Jasmine faced her own firestorm. At the gallery, colleagues looked at her differently. Whispers chased her through hallways. One evening, her mentor, Mrs. Alvarez, pulled her aside. Jasmine, you're brilliant. You've worked too hard for this. Don't let yourself be defined by him. The world won't see your achievements. They'll see a woman clinging to a billionaire. Jasmine's chest tightened. It's not like that. Even if it's not, that's what they'll say. The words echoed like a curse. The breaking point came at another gala, a month later. Jasmine attended by Daniel's side, trying to stand tall against the cameras. Inside, a well-dressed socialite cornered her, her smile sharp as glass. So, Ms. Collins, what's it like being the billionaire's latest project? Jasmine froze. Excuse me? You know, the woman said airily. His charity work, his personal company. You're certainly not the first. Daniel, standing nearby, stiffened. That's enough, he growled. But the woman only smirked. Touchy. I suppose some of us just know how the game is played. Humiliation flushed through Jasmine. She spun to Daniel. Is that true? Am I just another project to you? Daniel's chest tightened. No. Jasmine, no. Because that's how it feels sometimes. She snapped, her voice trembling. Like you're grateful I even look at you. Like I'm supposed to rescue you from your loneliness. The words cut out of her before she could stop them. Daniel recoiled, his face paling. It was his deepest fear made flesh, that she saw him as pathetic as a charity case. For a moment, the ballroom blurred around him. He could barely breathe. Without another word, he turned and walked out. Daniel disappeared for days. Calls went unanswered. His office reported he was unavailable. In his penthouse, he shut the curtains and sat in the dark, replaying Jasmine's words. Like you're grateful I even look at you. The boy in the photograph echoed inside him, whispering. She saw the truth. You were foolish to hope. Meanwhile, Jasmine lay awake night after night, sick with regret. She hadn't meant it, not like that. Her own fear, her own insecurities had twisted into words that wounded him. But how could she undo them? One evening, Jasmine walked the Harlem streets alone. The city buzzed, but she felt hollow. She stopped at a mural she had helped sponsor years ago, a wall of painted children holding books and flowers. She remembered why she did what she did, to create beauty, to give people hope. And she realized, Daniel had been her hope too. At the same time, Daniel stood in his private gym, punching a heavy bag until his fists ached. He thought of his father's voice, sneering that no one could ever love him. Jasmine's face flashed in his mind, the only person who had ever made him believe otherwise. But now, that fragile belief was shattered. 2 weeks later, the cultural initiative they had been working on launched without Daniel's presence. Jasmine gave her speech with a steady voice, but her heart wasn't in it. Every word felt like loss. Afterward, she slipped outside, tears finally spilling. She whispered to the night, I didn't mean to hurt you. But the city gave no answer. And somewhere across town, Daniel sat alone in his penthouse, staring at the skyline, convinced he had lost the only person who ever saw his heart. Everything they had built together, every laugh, every dance, every moment by the fire, lay in pieces. For Daniel, the shatter point confirmed his oldest wound. That love was not for him. For Jasmine, it was the agony of realizing she had wounded the man she cared for most. Both were left questioning the same thing. Were they ever truly worthy of each other's love? If you are truly enjoying this story, I humbly wish you subscribe and join our lovely family. Days blurred into nights in Daniel's penthouse. He avoided mirrors, avoided phones, avoided the board. The city kept moving, but he felt like a ghost wandering through it. One evening, his butler, Carter, brought him food and gently asked, Mr. Harrington, are you well? Daniel's voice cracked, surprising even himself. Tell me, Carter, would anyone ever choose me if I had nothing? The old man paused, his eyes soft. Someone already did. You just don't believe her yet. Daniel turned away, unable to answer. Jasmine found herself walking past the cafe where she and Daniel had once met to plan the Harlem initiative. The chairs were still there, the smell of roasted coffee beans still in the air. She sat at their table alone, fingers tracing the wood grain. The barista approached. Your usual? Jasmine shook her head. Not today. As she left, tears pricked her eyes. Every corner of the city seemed haunted by him. His laugh, his deep voice, the surprising softness in his eyes when he had looked at her at the cabin. She had thrown it all away in one reckless moment. Neither of them could escape the whispers. For Daniel, business papers printed columns titled, Harrington's Emotional Distraction. Billionaire loses focus over curator romance. Investors called Warning of Instability. For Jasmine, colleagues offered backhanded sympathy. It's for the best, one said. Men like him never really change. Another added, You'll thank yourself later. She smiled faintly, nodded politely, then went to the bathroom and wept silently into a paper towel. The world insisted they didn't belong together, but the ache in her chest told her otherwise. One rainy evening, Daniel sat on his balcony, staring at the storm. Lightning flashed against the skyline, and for a fleeting moment, he imagined Jasmine there, her hand on his arm, her voice steadying him. Across the city, Jasmine stood by her window, rain dripping down the glass. She whispered, God, if I get one more chance, I'll do it right. Please. They both longed, both ached. Both believed it was too late. Daniel wrote her a letter late at night, words scrawled in uneven ink. Jasmine, you were the only person who ever saw me. And even if I never see you again, know that those moments were the best of my life. He folded it, sealed it, but never mailed it. At the same time, Jasmine typed out a message on her phone. Daniel, I'm sorry. I didn't mean it. You mean more to me than I can explain. Her finger hovered over send. Then, with tears streaming, she deleted it. For two souls who had found rare light in each other, silence became their cruelest prison. They were still in love, still longing, but heartbreak had made them both cowards, afraid to risk the final step. And so, they drifted in parallel loneliness, the city between them echoing like an endless distance. The penthouse was too quiet. Even the hum of the city outside seemed muted, as though the world itself had gone still. Daniel sat in the leather chair by the window, staring at the skyline. Empty takeout containers cluttered the counter. His phone, buzzing endlessly for weeks, now lay dark and untouched. He had built his life on avoiding vulnerability, on never needing anyone, but Jasmine had cracked that armor, and then shattered it with a single sentence. Like you're grateful I even look at you. He closed his eyes, pressing his palms against them. He wanted to hate her for it, wanted to believe she had only confirmed what he already knew. But when he tried, all he could see was the cabin, the warmth of her laugh, the way she had said, I don't want easy, I want real. His chest ached. Maybe she had been afraid too. But could he risk believing that? After another day filled with emotional ups and downs, he went to the bathroom. The mirror glared back at him. Daniel had avoided it for weeks, but that night, unable to sleep, he finally looked. His beard was rougher, his eyes hollow. His frame, usually hidden under tailored suits, looked larger, heavier in the harsh light. For years, he had believed this reflection was the reason no one stayed. And Jasmine's words at the gala had sharpened that belief into a blade. But as he stood there, Carter's words echoed back. Someone already did. You just don't believe her yet. Daniel whispered to himself. And maybe I pushed her away because I didn't believe I could be loved. The mirror didn't answer, but something inside him shifted. A flicker of defiance against the old wound. Across Harlem, Jasmine stood in front of her bathroom mirror, staring at her reflection. Her eyes were tired, her cheeks hollow from sleepless nights. You ruined it, she whispered to herself. She replayed that night at the gala over and over, the words spilling from her mouth like poison. She had wanted to defend herself, to push back against the humiliation of being labeled a project. Instead, she had stabbed at Daniel's deepest wound. Voices echoed in her memory. Men like him come with baggage. He is not worth it. But Jasmine knew the truth now. He wasn't baggage. He is worth fighting for. He was a man. A flawed, hurting, good man. And she missed him more than she'd ever thought possible. The next day, Jasmine sat with Tasha over coffee. The warmth of the cafe couldn't thaw the frost in her chest. I think I lost him, Jasmine admitted. Tasha softened. Do you love him? Jasmine's throat tightened. Yes, God, yes. More than I thought possible. Then why are you sitting here with me instead of fighting for him? Tasha's bluntness hit her hard. Jasmine stared at her untouched mug. Because I'm scared. Because what if I'm not enough? What if I hurt him again? Tasha leaned forward, her voice fierce but kind. That man didn't need perfect. He needed real. And you are the most real woman I know. Go to him, Jazz. Don't let fear decide for you. Jasmine's eyes filled. For the first time since the gala, she felt clarity. That same evening, Daniel wandered into the children's center his foundation funded. He rarely went in person, but something had pulled him there. Inside, children laughed, scribbling crayons across paper. One boy tugged at Daniel's sleeve and asked, Mister, are you sad? Daniel blinked. Why would you say that? Because your eyes look like my mom's when she cries at night. The honesty pierced Daniel's chest. He crouched down, voice thick. Sometimes grown-ups forget how to be brave. The boy smiled softly. Then maybe you need someone to remind you. Daniel left shaken but also lighter. He knew exactly who that someone was. Through the glass he saw kids laughing, reading, drawing. Their joy was untainted, unguarded. A little boy ran past the window, round-faced, with eyes too familiar. Daniel's chest tightened. It was like seeing his younger self, but happier. Suddenly he thought of Jasmine again. How she had told him about the girl who won a scholarship. How she had insisted he was more than money. And he knew he wanted her back. Not as a savior. Not as a project. But as the woman who had seen his heart when no one else would. The days stretched on, filled with silence. Both Daniel and Jasmine avoided events. Avoided calls. Avoided each other. But the city had a way of pressing in. Daniel attended a board meeting where one director joked, "Guess your curator got tired of playing Muse, huh?" The laughter was shallow, cruel. Daniel's jaw clenched. For the first time, anger rose, not at himself, but at them. At the world that mocked what it couldn't understand. Meanwhile, Jasmine attended a small gathering at the gallery. A patron leaned close, murmuring, "Shame about Harrington. But you were smart not to tie yourself too closely to him." Jasmine smiled tightly, but inside she recoiled. Was this what she wanted, to live small, safe, untouched by risk? Jasmine stood on the steps of the Metropolitan Museum, watching tourists file in and out. This was the world she loved, the art, the culture, the stories. But as she stood there, she realized none of it felt whole without Daniel. Her pride whispered, "Stay away. Protect yourself." Her heart whispered, "Go to him. Tell him the truth." She closed her eyes and listened. And this time she chose her heart. That evening, she journaled furiously, the ink smudging beneath her hand. Love is risk. Love is vulnerability. And maybe I've been the coward all along. Late that night, Jasmine stood in her apartment, suitcase half-packed. She hadn't meant to. She wasn't running. Instead, she was preparing to move forward wherever forward was. She paused, staring at a photograph she had tucked in her dresser drawer. Daniel at the Children's Center launch, smiling faintly beside her. She touched the frame. "I love you," she whispered. "I don't care what the world says. I don't care if it costs me everything." With trembling hands, she grabbed her coat and keys. For once, she wouldn't wait for love to come back. She would fight for it. Daniel returned to his penthouse drenched from the rain. He was ready to at least admit what he wanted, even if it was too late. But when he stepped inside, his breath caught. Jasmine was standing in the living room. Her curls were damp from the rain, her coat clutched in her hands. She looked nervous, vulnerable, but determined. "How?" His voice cracked. "How did you?" "Your assistant," she said, her eyes shimmering. "He let me in." Silence stretched thick and fragile between them like glass. Finally, Jasmine broke it, her voice trembling but sure. "I hurt you, Daniel. I said something cruel, something I didn't mean, and I've hated myself for it every single day." Daniel's jaw clenched. "But maybe you were right. Maybe I am just a man who should be grateful." "Stop," she said, stepping closer. Her eyes locked onto his. "That night, I wasn't speaking truth. I was speaking fear. Fear of the whispers. Fear of what being with you might cost me. But the truth is," her voice cracked, "the truth is, I love you. I see you. Not your money. Not your scars. You." Daniel's throat tightened. He whispered hoarsely, "Say it again. I love you." Something inside him broke open. For the first time in his life, he believed it. He stepped closer, trembling. "Jasmine, I've waited my whole life for someone to see me. And when you did, I didn't know what to do with it. I got scared, pushed it away. But I love you too. God, I love you." Her breath hitched. And then, finally, they closed the distance. Their kiss wasn't polished or graceful. It was desperate, salty with tears, trembling with release. It was two broken souls choosing to be broken together, rather than apart. When they finally pulled back, foreheads pressed together, Daniel whispered, "The world will keep talking." "Let them," Jasmine replied, her smile wet with tears. "We'll write our own story." For the first time, Daniel felt something he never thought he'd have, peace. Not because the world had accepted him, but because she had. And Jasmine, holding his hand, knew this was what love at last truly meant. Choosing each other, even in the storm. A week later, Daniel and Jasmine attended another high-profile event. This time by choice, not obligation. The press was waiting, cameras flashing wildly as they stepped from the car. Daniel's instinct was to flinch, to shield himself, but Jasmine slipped her hand into his. Her touch steadied him. As they walked the carpet, a reporter called, "Mr. Harrington, are you confirming this relationship?" Daniel stopped. Cameras froze. He glanced at Jasmine, who gave a small, reassuring nod. He turned to the crowd. "Yes, I am. And for once in my life I don't care what you write. She is my heart." Gasps rippled through the air. Shutters clicked furiously. But Daniel felt lighter than he ever had. A month later, Daniel and Jasmine returned to Harlem for the opening of the expanded cultural initiative. This time the press came, but so did children, parents, and community leaders. A little girl tugged Jasmine's sleeve. "Miss Collins, is he your husband?" Jasmine laughed, cheeks flushing. "Not yet." Daniel, overhearing, bent down to the girl's level. "One day, if she'll keep me." The crowd chuckled, but Jasmine's heart swelled. In that moment, Daniel realized he wasn't just giving money, he was giving himself. His presence mattered. His story mattered. And Jasmine realized their love wasn't just about them. It was about creating something bigger, a legacy of hope. Weeks later, back at the cabin in the Catskills, Daniel stood by the fire, holding a small velvet box. His palms sweated. For a man who had built empires, nothing had ever terrified him more than this moment. "Jasmine," he began, voice low, "I spent most of my life believing I wasn't worthy of love. You proved me wrong. You made me believe in us. And I don't want to spend another day without you by my side." He opened the box, revealing a ring simple but elegant, just like her. "Will you marry me?" Tears spilled down Jasmine's cheeks. She whispered, "Yes, Daniel. 1,000 times yes." He slid the ring onto her finger, hands shaking, and for the first time, Daniel Harrington felt whole. The wedding was small, intimate, held in Harlem at the community center they had built together. Children they had supported scattered flower petals down the aisle. Strings of lights glowed warmly overhead. Daniel stood waiting, nerves alive, until Jasmine appeared in an elegant gown, radiant and sure. When she reached him, he whispered, "You're the most beautiful thing I've ever seen." "And you're mine," she whispered back. They exchanged vows not of perfection, but of honesty. To see each other, to fight for each other, to choose love even when the world doubted them. When they kissed, cheers erupted, laughter mingled with tears. And for once, Daniel didn't hide from the world. He embraced it with her. Later that night, as the celebration quieted, Daniel and Jasmine stepped outside beneath the Harlem stars. "Remember the first time you asked me to dance?" Jasmine teased. Daniel chuckled. "I was terrible." "You still are," she laughed, but she took his hand anyway. They swayed together under the night sky. No music but the rhythm of their hearts. Daniel murmured, "For years, I thought love wasn't for me. But you," his voice broke, soft with awe, "you were my unexpected miracle." Jasmine kissed him gently. "Love at last, Daniel. For both of us." As the city lights flickered in the distance, Daniel realized the boy in the photograph, the one who once felt unlovable, had finally been proven wrong. He wasn't just loved. He was chosen. And Jasmine knew her choice had been right all along. To see past the world's noise and find the man with the heart worth everything. Together, they had written a story not of scandal, but of redemption. Not of loneliness, but of love at last. Thank you for watching this story to the end. If you enjoyed this story, you will surely love the next one. It's as crazier and more intriguing as you can ever imagine. So do check it out. Click on the image showing on your screen right now to watch the next one. Thank you for watching this story to the end.